You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So this is first podcast back after the Thanksgiving break. Went to Oklahoma City. I'll be talking about that a little bit over the course of the next few podcasts. And then we just move on because we're moving on to Christmas. And we've got Christmas coming up. We're deep in the heart of the holiday season. So I'm going to ease in to this first podcast that I'm back on today. I'm recording this for you on a Tuesday. I flew back in on Monday yesterday, Oklahoma City, trying to figure out which way is up. This is that first work day, first podcast. Here we go. So I'm gonna start off with an easy lob topic, and that is man at odds with Ballard neighbors leaves neighborhood with help from nonprofit. The way this should have been written was Lawnmower man who angers Ballard neighbors, he gets some help from Andrea Suarez of 𝒆𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆. That's how it should have gone down. Two storylines here that we've read a lot on the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Lawnmower man. I mean, this guy has not ingratiated himself with the neighbors in Seattle, just in Ballard in particular. Just like the double-decker homeless recording sound system a little bit further west in Ballard has not ingratiated himself with recording music late at night to the ire of local neighbors. Lawnmower man, a couple dozen lawnmowers on the sidewalk, just a lot of stuff. He had kind of his own empire of debris and whatnot, lawnmowers. He was posted up and neighbors were like, and he made some noise. He was not a fan favorite with the locals in Ballard. So we're going to read about this today. So Andrea Suarez from 𝒆𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆 kind of does her thing, even though city councilmen have told her, hey, you need to stop. You're making us look bad. You're getting out there and you're doing all this work and you're a nonprofit and you're basically donating your own time. You're getting stuff done that the rest of us here at city, that's not a good look, is it? And that was a lot of the comments on the last couple of videos I did on Andrea Suarez. And I think the last one I did was, a city council member told her to basically stop because she was, the reasoning was, you're kind of confusing things. You're getting in the way of things. Well, the way I see it is she's actually getting stuff done. And I think that's the way everybody else saw it. And you, the viewers and listeners, you saw it that way too. The comments that I saw were like, she's just embarrassing local government. It's what's going on. So this one here, this is a good one. Let's read it. Let's see what's going on. How can Andrea Suarez, how can 𝒆𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆 get in and get something done where the city who has millions of dollars at its disposal, just not a lot of forward action on some of these topics, right? So Charles Woodward is letting go of his past. For now, anyway. Because, Lawnmower man could come back, right? He could come back at any time. Charles Woodward, Lawnmower man, is letting go of his past, and volunteers with 𝒆𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆 are now trying to help him rebuild his future. Piece by piece, he kept saying, you can take this, says Andrea Suarez, the nonprofit's group's founder. So what she's referencing is them coming in and basically dismantling in such a way that Lawnmower man was okay with what was going on and to get him into some more permanent housing because he shouldn't be living, nobody should be living on the streets. For the past 2 weekends, Suarez and her crew removed thousands of pounds of wood and scrap metal from his encampment. I think he had at least a couple of RVs and he just had a whole bunch of stuff, right? So they removed a couple of 1,000 pounds of wood and scrap metal from his encampment, including all the lawnmowers that once occupied the corner of 8th Avenue Northwest and Northwest 49th Street. 8th Avenue Northwest is a main north-south arterial within the Ballard community of Seattle. So having this on a main street, it didn't help things. Let's just put it that way, right? And then the loud noise at night didn't help things either, coming out of Lawnmower man's encampment. Now, the videos I have seen from him, he did not look like he was actively on drugs. He didn't look like that to me from just the video footage that I've seen. He did seem rather angry, no matter whom he engaged. He seemed pretty upset. maybe that's his thing. Maybe he's upset. Maybe he's been dealt some tough blows and he's trying to figure out which way to go. And maybe he figured, well, you know what? Being lawnmower man, it's not the best thing ever. If you're living on the streets on a sidewalk and you got all your stuff, not necessarily the best move. And I think he basically came to the conclusion on his own, maybe it's time I move on here and somebody's willing to help me. And that happened to be Andrea Suarez from 𝑦𝒔𝒕𝒐𝒂𝒕𝒍. So and he had all this stuff occupied the corner of 8th Avenue Northwest and 49th Street. This is why neighbors gave him the nickname Lawnmower Man, as did we, because it describes what he had going on. He was Lawnmower Man. Yeah, anytime you have a couple of dozen lawnmowers lined up on the sidewalk, you're going to get lawnmower. You're going to become Lawnmower Man, right? So even though a lot of trash was also removed from this encampment, Suarez says Woodward is proud of the fact that he did not use illegal drugs or alcohol during his time of living in the community. And that is something that I noticed. He looked like he was somewhat normal for being homeless, but he didn't have the drugged out look. He didn't have the, run over 10 times kind of look, how a lot of them have just because of the lifestyle. It's not conducive to looking fresh and looking great. It's a tough lifestyle. But Lawnmower Man, he just seemed more angry than anything else. But he's coming out and saying, hey, he's not doing drugs or not doing alcohol. And that was never the neighbor's complaints. The neighbor's complaint was, hey, you got stuff all over and you're living in an RV on the side of, super busy street and, definitely causing some issues at night with sound. So he wanted me to emphasize that, says Suarez. No drugs or alcohol in his time when he's on the side of the street there in 8th Avenue Northwest. We first spotlighted this story in October after neighbors called us, talking about Como. So Como first spotlighted this story in October after neighbors called Como for help, complaining about Woodward being a menace to the community, playing loud music at night and threatening anyone who approached him. He was pretty nasty. He was pretty angry. But you know what? You can get through to those people. You can get through to people like that. It's just you're going to have to take a little bit different approach. And apparently Andrea did, and she got through, and she was able to make a difference in this situation. He said to me, Andrea, I'm tired of being angry, and I think he's just worn out, says Suarez. For those of you who haven't followed this podcast, I've communicated a number of times with Andrea, and we are going to do something with Andrea down the road. She's doing work that the government is saying, you can't be doing that. You're a no-go. You're confusing things by coming out here and volunteering your time and cleaning up garbage from homeless encampments and helping residents of encampments get into housing. Government's saying, yeah, we need the spotlight on us for this job. The jobs you're taking jobs away from us, even though she's volunteering and her group volunteers and her group doesn't cost the city anything, but apparently it's causing some confusion. And like a lot of us kind of thought in our minds and didn't say it out loud, well, it's because you're making the city look bad. Making the city look bad. And I find that entertaining. Because it's not hard to do, right? I mean, just go to any of these areas and you're like, oh, yeah, I guess the millions and millions of dollars that are supposed to be spent on homelessness, we don't have enough to go around. If you're not from Seattle, one of the stories here is, and it's a local news story, is they're not going to do a point in time count, I believe it is, for the homeless this year. I was trying to figure out why, and there's a bunch of different excuses why the city isn't going to do a point in time count of the homeless because it's going to be not representative. I just kind of want to know. I mean, and they do this, I think it's once a year. They do a point in time count of how many homeless are on the streets, but they're saying it's not going to be accurate, so we're not going to do it. And I was kind of like, yeah, I think you should just do one anyway and give us the results and let us figure out, hey, maybe it's not accurate. Don't care. Give us the next best thing to accurate. I don't know. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we're all trying to figure out. And it's kind of like, all right, this is an ongoing story, but the Lawnmower Man, He apparently has retired his collection of lawnmowers for now. So there's that. So he said to me, Andrea, I'm tired of being angry, and I think he's just worn out, says Suarez. He was angry. Lawnmower Man was angry. I can definitely attest to that, seeing video. Well, he would drop the F-bomb on folks. Suarez said after watching our story, she wanted to take a different approach. And that is what she has always said is, hey, look at what we're doing. We're out here volunteering. We're trying to help people. We're cleaning up garbage. We're cleaning up needles. We're cleaning up all kinds of stuff. We're actually trying to help people that are suffering from homelessness, houselessness, get into a different scenario. And it takes a lot of work. So we treated him with dignity and respect. We bought most of his lawnmowers and stereo as well, said Suarez. All right, so her nonprofit spent a little bit of money and they bought the lawnmowers and the stereos. Andrea, what are you going to do with the lawnmowers? I'm just wondering. Are you going to donate? Are they operational? I don't know. I mean, was he selling them on the sidewalk or he just had a collection? These are all questions that we need to know. We really don't. But I mean, if you're going to talk about Lawnmower Man, you kind of want to know anyway, right? So, but along with this personal touch, she says that the threats by vigilantes also helped him realize it was time to move on. Recently, someone came by and shattered his van's window. Now, that's not cool, but I get it. If you're living in that community and you've got Lawnmower Man posted up and he's making a lot of noise, you're going to be upset. There's going to be somebody out there who's going to take matters into their own hands. And that's why we're talking about vigilantes here. And so somebody came by and bashed his van's window. Not cool. Not cool. Yet, I kind of get it. Doesn't justify it, doesn't rationalize it, but it's like, all right, they're sending this guy a message. Hey, you know what? We don't appreciate your contribution in such a manner to the community. We'd like to see you move on, get whatever help you need. And so, somebody reacted and shattered his van's window. That sucks. The city also tried to offer him housing and services, but that didn't work. Now, I did hear, I think it was one of the Como reporters was asking him, hey, if the city offers you services or if the city offers you housing, are you going to take it? And he basically said, no, I'm not a dummy. I'm going to look at the offer and I'm going to think about it. But whatever the offer was from the city, he wasn't down with it. He basically said no. I think he just basically doesn't trust the city was the feeling I got. I'm completely reading into that, and I don't know the situation here. I don't know the circumstances, the actual circumstances. But following this story, it kind of felt like that's what the deal was. This neighbors say that they're just amazed at what this nonprofit accomplished in such a short amount of time. Uh-oh. Did we say that out loud? The nonprofit accomplished something in a short amount of time with basically zero resources from the state? How does that work? How does that happen? Well, different angle, right? Different angle. Came in, worked a different angle, and it worked. Gave him something the city wasn't giving him. That's why they had an impact and the city didn't, said Chris Miller, owner of CM Miller Finishing and Designs. We Heart Seattle's success is also getting the attention of council member Dan Strauss, who represents Ballard just a few weeks ago. Did a podcast on that. Suarez says Strauss told her group to stand down with their encampment cleanups and outreach program, saying it was a distraction. And by distraction, we mean you're doing our work and you're making us look bad. That's the distraction. I'm okay with this distraction. I'm totally okay with it. Unless there's something in there. I mean, and I understand the city wants everything to be just dialed in. Okay, you guys handle this. You guys handle this. But let's be honest. City of Seattle has so many homeless encampments that they need all the help that they can get. Because so often you'll hear of people in the homeless encampments saying, nobody's come by and nobody's offered me services. Nobody's offered me housing. Nobody's offered whatever. It's this ongoing, it's a really, transitional community. And that's why it's so hard to do the homeless count is that so many people are living in so many environments that you just can't pinpoint. And it's not like you're walking up to an apartment building and you're knocking on 10 different doors. some of the places these folks are living are off the beaten path, shall we say, not easy to find. And so, an accurate counting is difficult at best. But we kind of need to know, all right, so how many thousand of homeless are we dealing with here in Seattle? So when you've got a situation like that, it's not like this is under control by the city. It's not under control by the state. It's not under control by the county. It's not under control at all. It's just not. So if there are people coming in with approaches that are working, as a small business owner, I kind of look at that and go, all right, yeah, they're not 100%. They don't have an actual position here, but if they're making a difference, I'm okay with that. I just am, because it makes sense. And this is a make sense kind of podcast, right? So that's my thought. If there is something that is, liability or insurance wise or whatever, yeah, I get that. But we're kind of at that point where just do something and get some of this cleaned up, get some of these people the help that they need, because this whole scenario has just exploded and it's gone sideways in the city of Seattle, and it's not a good look. Portland, no different. But on Monday, he sent Como News. Now we're back to Dan Strauss, who was not pleased with Andrea Suarez and 𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆's success because it makes them look bad, is my general thought on this. Yeah, you're pissed off because it just doesn't look good. Somebody's kind of snaking in and getting some stuff done, and they're not costing a lot of money. It's volunteer work. And so how about them apples, right? But on Monday, he sent Como News a statement that reads, in part, "I'm glad when volunteers are able to interact positively with unsheltered residents." This is a complete politician's statement, right? Let me read it again. "I'm glad when volunteers are able to interact positively with unsheltered residents. But wait a minute, you were just saying that it's a distraction. Redeploying efforts where they're needed and leaving sites of critical focus to governmental and community leaders. I'm glad when volunteers are able to interact positively with unsheltered residents, redeploying efforts where they're needed and leaving sites of critical focus to governmental and community leaders." Well, the whole homeless deal has been left to governmental and community leaders, and look how that's worked out. Swimmingly. Right. So then kind of through a backdoor approach, 𝒂𝒕𝒍 is actually getting some work done. I find that interesting. I actually think it's great. Suarez says for now, it's at least a start. I think he just felt cared for in a different way. Talking about Lawnmower Man, Andrea said. Woodward, Lawnmower Man, wouldn't talk to Como News on Monday, but 𝒂𝒕𝒍 says they were able to find him a temporary apartment. And that's another thing. I wish there were some more permanent approaches for folks, because so much of this is, like I just read, is temporary apartment. You want to see some more permanent solutions, and yet it's so expensive, especially here in the city of Seattle. But we are literally spending hundreds of millions of dollars, and I'm just not seeing a lot of the approaches of what's going on. So one of my big things about being down in Oklahoma City is I did a little bit of research on homelessness in Oklahoma. And number one, climate in Oklahoma, wildly different than Seattle. Seattle, you're going to get wet if you're outside, but it doesn't have the extreme heat and the extreme cold like a climate like Oklahoma City has. Even when I was down there, I think one day, it was really cold because you have that biting wind that comes through. So it's not necessarily the air temperature, it's the wind chill factor. And then the next day it's 70, but in the summer, just blazing hot. Being homeless in Oklahoma, difficult. And they handle it wildly differently. They do. They do not allow that to get out of hand. They address it. People get to services. People get to housing. They've got a system. They've got it kind of squared away. They do not have needle exchange programs and a number of other things. They have not decriminalized a lot of what we used to consider, real crimes. They haven't decriminalized things. And their city looks a lot different than Seattle does. It's wildly different. It's vastly different. You don't have the graffiti. You don't have the trash. You don't have any of that stuff. You still got crime. You've still got gun violence. That's a real thing. But you don't have the homeless thing. And that it's interesting to see, a real contrast between a couple of cities. And Seattle is obviously much larger. The downtown core is much larger than Oklahoma City. And yet, with all the money that Seattle has available to it, shouldn't it be able to figure out how to square away their homeless population? You would think so, with the amount of funds that are available. And for a city that's got an international presence like Seattle does, I was flying in last night and I was kind of, it was really nice being in Oklahoma City and visiting with my parents, because nobody wears masks. Nobody talks about wearing a mask. Nobody asks you if you're vaxxed. Nobody's intrusive that way. They're just kind of living their lives like we should be doing. But here in Seattle, here in Washington, we're just panicked about all this other stuff that we shouldn't really be panicked about. So having an approach like that was really nice. It was really refreshing to go from what feels like lockdown here in Seattle to an environment like that, where literally the last night I was with my parents. We went out to dinner. We went to BJ's, which is a chain that I love because they have an amazing dessert called a 𝒆𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆. And if you haven't had a 𝒆𝒂𝒕𝒍 at BJ's, it's worth the effort. I would say use that as your cheat meal, not a daily thing, because you will balloon up. But we went to BJ's, and at the front, and I'm trained to be looking for, okay, you need to wear a mask on steps 3, 4, and 5 of the ladder. Step 6, you don't need to. 7 and 8 are optional, but we'd highly recommend you wearing a mask for, that level. And then as you come down, definitely mask up, maybe triple mask. We're not sure. I'm exaggerating, but it feels like we're kind of at that level here in the state of Washington. And specifically in Seattle, people are just so worked up about all this stuff. They're so mask Nazi-ish, if that makes sense. Just, get right on it. Down in Oklahoma at BJ's, we've got a sign at the entry. And so I was fumbling around in my pocket, following my parents in, getting my mask out, because I'm like, I got to have my mask on. And then I looked up and I realized nobody had a mask on that was walking around. The hostess didn't have a mask on. People didn't have masks on. It was probably a corporate policy. And so I asked the gal that was walking us to our table, so we've just got the sign there, right? And we're not really doing masks. Is that the deal? And she goes, yeah, that's it. I'm like, okay, I can work with that. Completely reasonable. Totally reasonable, right? So that part was really cool. But then when I flew home last night, came home at it was getting dark. It was like 4:30. The Seattle city skyline is really cool. I mean, you've got water, you've got Puget Sound to the west, you've got the mountains to the west. It's able to see all of that. And you're able to see the natural beauty of Seattle. The skyline is amazing in Seattle now. I mean, it's huge. I mean, you go past Bellevue skyline, that's getting big. And so you can't really see the underlying problems in Seattle. You just see the natural beauty and you're like, yeah, that's a cool city too. And then you get down to the boots on the ground and you're like, yeah, there's some work to do. There's some stuff going on that you don't see in a community like Oklahoma City. And so it was really interesting contrast. You've got one city that is flat, not a lot to look at, but you got wide open spaces. And you've got no Rona, the fear factor of the Rona. There's Rona there like everywhere else, but you don't have that whole fear factor of, hunker down. Let me wear, triple mask. Let's get vaxxed up, 14 times in a row because we might be safer that way. None of that stuff. Just people kind of living their lives. And that was a refreshing change. And just kind of like the refreshing change of Andrea Suarez and her We Heart Seattle actually getting something done in the local community. I mean, whether Lawnmower Man comes back or not, who knows? I mean, those are fluid situations. And anybody who works with the unhoused, they understand that. I mean, people change their minds, people come back, people do all kinds of stuff. Maybe Lawnmower Man comes back, but maybe there's a brief respite for the local, the local residents and the local homeowners, and they can say, hey, it wasn't a long-term solution, but, you gave us a little bit of a break. Maybe it is a long-term solution that Lawnmower Man's moved on and he's got some temporary apartment housing. You just don't know in some of this stuff. But I think working to some kind of means to an ends, and whether you have got state or city or county money behind you, I don't really care as long as it gets done. But that's just me. And everybody else they're more concerned about, are you authorized to be picking up that garbage off the public street? Because I don't know. If you don't have a permit to pick up that garbage, if you don't have a permit to pick up those needles, we probably need to talk. There's a reckoning that needs to happen. You need to put that garbage down because you're making us look bad. You're getting people into housing that we can't seem to do. You're making us look bad. It's kind of the way I see it. So, Andrea, keep up the strong work. And I hope to meet up with you soon. So, yeah. All right. There is podcast number 1 since I'm back in the hot seat. All right. Thanks so much for being part of the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. I will catch up with you soon. Until then, stay safe. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. On to Christmas. I'm going to give you a hint. One of my next podcasts is going to be, there's only 24 days left of shoplifting until Christmas. What? Did I say shoplifting? How could that be? It's supposed to be shopping. Shoplifting. I'm going to be covering that one soon. Thanks again. We'll catch up soon. Talk then. Bye.